I once wrote a letter that could have changed my entire life, but I never sent it, and that, perhaps, is the biggest regret I carry. Not the heartbreak, not the loneliness that followed, not even the what ifs that kept me up at night. No, what I regret most is the silence. We live our lives believing that there will always be another moment, another day, another chance to say what matters. But life doesn't work that way. Life doesn't wait, and neither does love. I was 23 when I wrote that letter. It was raining that day, I remember. The kind of soft rain that made everything feel like a memory already. I folded the letter twice, as if it were made of something precious and fragile. I placed it in an envelope, sealed it, wrote her name across the front. I even walked to the mailbox, but I never dropped it in. I stood there, fingers trembling, heart louder than the rain. I must have stood for an hour. Then, quietly, without even realizing it, I turned around and walked away. Her name was Claire. We met on a Tuesday. I remember because the station was unusually empty for a weekday afternoon. She sat on the opposite bench, clutching a worn paperback copy of Jane Eyre. The corners of the book were frayed, the spine broken in places. She read slowly, lips moving with the words. That detail stayed with me. I asked her about the book. She looked up, surprised, then smiled. That smile, subtle, warm, unsure, hit me like a chord I didn't know existed in me. We talked for 30 minutes, about books mostly, stories that changed us, authors who made us feel less alone. She didn't tell me her name, and I didn't ask. Somehow, it didn't feel necessary. She left when her train came. She turned before boarding and said, I'm glad we met. That was at a brief moment, a tiny collision in a very big world. 3 weeks passed. Then, one cold evening, I saw her again. A small cafe tucked between a laundromat and an old record store. She was sitting by the window, sipping coffee, lost in another book. I walked in. She looked up. Her smile, this time, was recognition. We sat together, talked for hours. This time, we shared names. This time, I learned she was a teacher preparing to move to London for a new job. 5 weeks left, she said. She wasn't sure if she was ready. I wasn't sure if I wanted her to go, but I didn't say anything. We began meeting more often, by accident at first, then by intention. Parks, bookstores, train stations. It felt like the universe didn't want us to say goodbye, but it never became more than that. We didn't hold hands, we didn't kiss. It was something softer, more fragile, like a page that hadn't been turned yet. Then one night, she asked me, why haven't you ever told me how you feel? And I froze. I wanted to tell her everything, that she had become the part of my day I looked forward to most, that I noticed the way she tapped her fingers when nervous, that her laugh had a way of making even silence feel full. But I said nothing. She looked at me for a moment longer. Then she nodded, like she understood something I didn't have the courage to say. That night, I wrote the letter. I wrote it as if my life depended on it. And in some way, maybe it did. I told her I was scared, not of her, but of the feeling she gave me. The sense that maybe I wasn't as broken as I thought. That maybe I deserved something beautiful, something true. I told her I wanted to try, that I didn't know how long distance would work, but I'd learn. For her, I'd learn. I signed my name. I walked to her apartment the next morning. The letter felt heavy in my pocket, but I didn't ring the bell. I stood outside, heart pounding. My hand hovered near the mailbox. I walked back and forth, sat on the curb, read the letter again, folded it, unfolded it, and then I walked away. She left the following week, sent me one message: "Take care of yourself. I'll remember you." I never replied. Years passed. I kept the letter. Sometimes I would take it out, unfold it, and read it slowly, as if she might still hear the words I never said. I built a life, a good one even, a career, friends, moments, but never another Claire. Once I heard she got married. I saw a photo by accident. She looked older, happier, still holding a book. That day, I read the letter again. Now I'm older. My hands tremble more. My words come slower. But the silence of that moment has never faded. Before Claire, I was already used to silence. I grew up in a house where emotions were swallowed. My father was a quiet man, and my mother believed feelings were best written in diaries, not spoken aloud. We weren't cruel to each other, we were simply distant. My earliest memory of unspoken words is watching my mother cry silently in the kitchen while I sat in the next room pretending not to notice. In school, I was a boy with good grades and no opinions. When I liked someone, I said nothing. When someone hurt me, I smiled instead. And so silence became my shield, comfortable, reliable, but also lonely. By the time I met Claire, I had become fluent in silence. I had convinced myself that real feelings only brought mess, that vulnerability was weakness, that if you never say anything, you never risk being rejected. But I was wrong. Not saying something doesn't protect you, it just guarantees you'll never be known. I remember one of my English students. Her name was Layla. She had fled a war-torn country, arrived with almost no English, and sat in the back of the class every day, notebook clutched like a lifeline. For the first month, she didn't speak, just listened, observed. One day, I asked her to read a line from a simple poem. Her hands trembled, her voice cracked, but she read it. And when she finished, the class clapped. Not because it was perfect, but because it was brave. After class, she came to me and said, "My father used to read that poem to me when I was little, but I never thought I'd be able to say it again. Not in this language." That moment reminded me of Claire, of the letter, of how power doesn't come from perfect grammar or beautiful phrasing. It comes from daring to speak. I still teach English. Not because it's about verbs and nouns, but because it's about permission. Permission to express, to feel, to belong. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I'd given myself that permission sooner. If I had dropped that letter in the box. If Claire had read my words, cried, called, said, "Let's try." Would we have lasted? I don't know. But I know I wouldn't carry this silence. So now, in this small classroom filled with immigrants with hope in broken English and too many memories, they write letters. I ask them, "What's something you wish you had said?" And we write, together. Letters to mothers, to lost lovers, to cities left behind, to dreams still waiting. Sometimes we read them aloud. And even if no one understands every word, everyone feels it. Language doesn't begin in the mouth. It begins in the heart. So here's what I've learned. Don't wait for the right time. Don't wait for perfect English. Don't wait for the world to pause and ask you how you feel. Speak. Write. Whisper if you must. But don't stay silent. Even if they don't answer. Even if the moment is gone. At least you'll know you sent it. When we crafted this story, we weren't just thinking about a lost love. We were thinking about you, about the learners out there sitting quietly on a bus ride home, in a lonely dorm room, or at a corner cafe in a foreign city. We thought of you, the person who once wanted to say something but didn't, the one who had the words in their mind but couldn't bring them to their lips. Silence isn't about lacking vocabulary. Silence is often about fear. The character in The Letter I Never Sent didn't simply lose a moment. He lost a piece of himself he was too afraid to speak into the world. And we believe that feeling is something every English learner knows deeply. You're not just learning English to pass a test. You're learning it to tell someone how much they mean to you, to explain what you believe in, to say, I'm still here. But often, the first thing you learn isn't grammar or pronunciation. It's fear. Fear of mistakes, of sounding foolish, of being misunderstood. So, you stay silent. But then you realize silence hurts more than any mistake ever could. We once met a learner in his 60s. His hands trembled as he held a notebook filled with phrases and simple sentences. I don't need perfect grammar, he said. I just want to say what I couldn't say when I had the chance. Another student, 17, came to us with tears in her eyes. She didn't want to memorize irregular verbs. She just wanted to write a letter to the best friend she hadn't seen in years. I want her to know I'm okay and that she changed my life. We see stories like this every single day. Language doesn't start in the mouth. It starts in the heart. You don't need to speak fluently to be heard. You only need to be honest. The letter I never sent reminds us that regret doesn't come from what happened. It comes from what we were too afraid to say, from the words we held back. How many messages have you typed and deleted? How many moments have you turned away from because you thought you weren't ready? How many words have you studied but never dared to speak? You're not alone. This story is also about belief, the belief that your voice deserves to be heard. I remember a Japanese friend once told me, I'm terrible at English, so I only send emails. I never speak up. But one day at a global meeting, he stood and spoke, hesitant, imperfect, but sincere. Afterward, a manager hugged him and said, You speak with truth. That's the only language that matters. That's what I want you to understand. Truth is the only language that matters, whether you're fluent or fumbling, whether you've just begun or are still afraid. If your words come from your heart, you've already won. To those who still carry letters inside them, this story is about a love that slipped away. But it's also a message to everyone carrying unspoken thoughts, unread letters, unfinished sentences. If you're learning English, begin with the words you truly need to say. Write a letter to your mother. Journal about the pain you can't express yet. Record yourself saying, I'm tired, or I miss you, or I'm proud of myself in English. You'll see English stops being just a language. It becomes a mirror, a bridge, a key. Write, speak, whisper if you must, but don't keep it all inside. We create stories like this because we believe in emotion over perfection. No one learns English just to memorize a vocabulary list. They learn it to be seen, to be understood, to connect. And no one wants to live with the question, what if I had just said it? So say it, write it, send it, even if you're not ready, even if you're afraid, even if you've only just begun. Begin anyway, and we'll be here with you every single day. Thank you for listening to today's story. If this story moved you, please share it. because someone out there might be carrying the same unspoken words. Don't forget to subscribe to Tailcrafter English, and share this video with anyone who needs a little emotion and a little English. We tell one story every day, not just to teach English, but to teach you how to feel deeper, speak louder, and live more fully in any language you choose. You don't need perfect English. You just need your story.